right? I like what Jacob Cowing is giving us right now. And really, I hate to say it, but it's making me wonder why we drafted Ricky Pearsall. Honestly.
I mean, how much better would the Niners have been if they had picked Zach Frazier?
Yes.
Freaking all pro center. I mean, could you imagine if instead of adding Pooney, you added Frazier and Pooney? By the way, here's the latest.
Offensive line will be solved.
Here's the latest on Pearsall. This is Dr. Pandya. Dr. Pandya is an interesting guy. He's talking about here a shoulder subluxation, and here he is. This is the injury that Ricky Pearsall has. Here's the doctor describing it.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Pandya. A lot of 49ers fans found out last night that Ricky Pearsall has been out of training camp and preseason games due to a shoulder subluxation. Here's a quick breakdown of what this actually means. Now, the shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint. You've got your ball, which is the humerus, and the socket, which is the glenoid. Now, if the arm is impacted in a certain way, is placed in an extreme position, or you're born with a looser joint, that shoulder joint can basically sublux or dislocate. Now, what's the difference? A shoulder subluxation is when the ball partially comes out of the socket, whereas in a dislocation, that ball completely comes out of the socket. Typically, dislocations have a higher degree of energy that causes the injury to occur. Now, in general, one of the things you get worried about, regardless of whether it's a full dislocation or a subluxation, is whether there's damage to the cartilage around the shoulder joint that helps to keep it in place, which is the labrum, as well as to the capsule, which is the covering of the joint, and the ligaments. In addition, you can worry about injury to the cartilage as well as the bone and sometimes the muscles around the shoulder joint. Now, the good news is that typically with a shoulder subluxation, sometimes there may not be damage to these structures, or the structures can be minimally damaged. So essentially, many players who have a shoulder subluxation are treated conservatively, meaning they don't need surgery. Typically, what you're looking through physical therapy and rest is you want to restore range of motion, you want to have no pain, you want to have full strength, and what you want to make sure is that you don't feel like the shoulder is going to pop out or shift out of joint when you're doing football activities. Now, sometimes players can have multiple subluxations where it becomes a recurring issue. If this is the case, sometimes you do need surgery performed, particularly since the structures in the shoulder have been damaged or been stretched out. If there's not that damage, or a shoulder is able to basically be stable through physical therapy, then you don't necessarily need surgery.
All right, so there is kind of a breakdown from Dr. Pandya, who's a good guy. We have him on. We've had him on the radio on 95.7 The Game for a while, and he's really good at kind of breaking down sports injuries. And as you heard there, he went through Pearsall. The point that I thought was the key point was what he made, the point that he just made at the end, which is that if there is a multiple subluxation of the shoulder,
you got to get it worked on.
Yeah, it might require surgery. And it's according to what Kyle's talking about, he had this problem at the University of Florida. So there is potential that Ricky's going to need surgery and could miss an awful lot of time. So
all right,
I don't know that that's the prognosis yet. It's still kind of TBD, but this situation is, I don't want to say dire, but they drafted a guy who had a shoulder injury, and now it looks like it's a recurring shoulder injury, and he's probably going to wind up missing some significant amount of time. This was my main concern on draft day, is when I wanted Xavier Legette or one of these other receivers. I just didn't love the durability factor here with Pearsall, and he hasn't played at all. He's been in the blue jersey all summer. They've kept this guy in bubble wrap repeatedly, and they can't get to week one. They can't even get him on the field. So what is frustrating to me is that what the pain and the violence and what he's going to have to endure going forward is so much greater than what he's had to endure up to this point, and he hasn't been able to get on the field at all. So until proven otherwise, Ricky Pearsall is glass, and that was a bad pick.
Are you asking me a question?
No, I'm just giving you my state of the state on Pearsall. But what did you think, Coach? Because obviously we didn't see him. You heard the doctor talk about that injury. I don't know if you had that injury as a player yourself, but this is very frustrating with Pearsall, because it's like, did they not do their due diligence on his full medical profile before the draft? You're taking this guy in the first round. Very frustrating. Very frustrating.
Well, for me, I have had major shoulder surgery on my left shoulder. And really all of the, I love what the doc is doing, But the facts are is that it's like your shoulder is a joint, basically a ball joint, and your shoulder holds in as a ball. Okay. And basically what's happening is that when you get a dislocation, the shoulder comes out of your shoulder joint, right? And you have to put the ball back
in. And there's
in.
torn adhesions and everything, right?
And there's tendons that attach to the front and the back of the shoulder called labrum. Okay. So what happens is that sometimes the actual connection can be damaged, and because of the cup actually stretching in and out, where if it never comes out but you're still moving inside of the joint, it can become weak, right? And the labrum that's attached around it can become frayed over time. That's why shoulder injuries are kind of like a wear and tear injury. It takes a long time for a shoulder to kind of like necessarily hurt you. So for me, it's not this is a one-time injury, he can get it fixed. This is a wear and tear injury that's gonna keep happening over time, right? So it's literally a shoulder injury that you can't help. I mean, and if he keeps spraining it, after a while, they're gonna have to start looking at the structural damage of it. If he keeps spraining it, that's just what it is. So it's happened before he got here. And then another thing is like, stop with if it's happened twice since he's been here, can we stop it with all of a sudden it just flared up? This has been something he's been dealing with for a long time. Okay.
Sounds like a chronic situation.
When I got my shoulder done, the first time I hurt my shoulder was in high school. I had to finally get it done once I got into college. So it was a wear and tear injury. So shoulder injuries just don't happen. And when they do that way, they're catastrophic. You know exactly what it is and you can fix it.
And they reoccur a lot.
Yes. But so
why is that? Why do shoulder injuries reoccur a lot?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, one thing that struck me is that he got hurt blocking. Blocking isn't a load-bearing endeavor. You mean you're putting your hands out on somebody, you're moving them, but I would have expected the shoulder injury to happen something with contact. Maybe he ran into somebody, fell on the ground. So I don't know. And where there's smoke, there's fire, because the physicality of his game was in question before we got him. So this isn't stuff we're making up. You know what I mean? Like, this was out here already. And shoulder injuries just don't come out of nowhere, right? They persist over time. I've had multiple shoulder injuries myself. I've torn labrum in the front and the back, chipped rotator cuffs, all on my left shoulder, bro. So it happens, bro. And shoulder injuries don't get better unless you actually go in there.
Yeah. Oh, they oftentimes are recurring injuries.